Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Tuesday, October 13th, 3 Tuesdays, 21 days, count them, before Election Day. And we are talking about what else? The presidential election with my Calbuzz partner and esteemed political analyst, Phil Traunstein, who, among other things, is probably one of the best educated and best informed political writers in America on the subject of polling. And Phil, I want to start with that this morning. If I'm Joe Biden, I'm looking at, I'm up 10 in the Real Clear Politics national poll. I'm up in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. I'm up in Florida. So if we're living in a normal universe, which is to say not the Batman comic with the Joker in charge that we are living in, put aside the chicanery with the ballots, it looks like Biden is on his way to at least a large, if not a landslide victory. How reliable are these polls? You there?
Well, it's a wonderful question because 4 years ago, everybody knew that we have an electoral college system, which is the definitive arena in which the election is decided. You have to win state by state by state. But everybody kept paying attention to the national poll numbers in which Hillary Clinton was ahead by 3 or 4 points. And when all came out in the wash, she did win by about 3 points nationwide, but she lost by 77,000 votes total across 3 states.
Uh-oh. Phil?
Which had presumed to be the blue wall for Democrats, that if you win those states, you put together enough electoral votes to win the presidency. Well, Trump managed to win those states by very small margins. And when the pollsters went back and looked at it, what they discovered was the state polling that had been done, or the polling in those states, was not sophisticated enough. They hadn't taken into account rural, white, not college educated voters to an adequate degree. And so that's the fix they've made this year. Plus, the national pollsters, and you probably hear my little puppy here squealing, but the national pollsters have paid a lot of attention to that this year, and specifically have paid attention to the state, to polling in states. And so while Biden is up 10% nationally, we should ignore that because we suffer from shock from 2016.
PTSD. We're all living in the PTSD universe.
Exactly. That is exactly what we live in. Nobody wants to be burned again. Nobody wants to say, oh yeah, it's in the bag for Biden, when that's what they were doing last time, and we got creamed, and everybody's, as one writer said, there was crying on the subways, there was gnashing of teeth on the beach.
So what you're saying is, in point of fact, absent PTSD, we should believe what is in front of our eyes, which is Biden's up 7 in Pennsylvania, he's up 7 in Michigan, he's up 6.3 in Wisconsin, he's up 7.5 in Nevada, he's up in Florida, which
in
Trump
Florida,
absolutely has
he's up 3.7. 3.7 in Florida, an average of 3 points. Now, you got to remember, I'm not a big fan of poll averaging, but it's the handiest, quickest way to get a fix on this. And the reason I'm not a big fan of it is they all define the universe of their voters differently. All the pollsters do. Some have likely voters, some have registered voters, some have different, and they all have different methods for determining who is a likely voter. So averaging polls isn't mathematically pure, but it's pretty handy. And if you give it a sort of a wide berth and you say, okay, 3, 4, 5 points one way or the other. So if you look at Florida, 3.7 for Biden, that's right on the edge, right? We don't really know that that's a Biden lead, but it certainly indicates a chance for Biden. And
I think that's a Biden campaign calling you now. That's
oh, yeah, it's actually, yeah.
Well,
So
we need more. We need more.
we need more distractions. Well, here, let me just say, there's one thing that is worrisome, and that's this. The Biden campaign is being socially responsible. And they've concluded that they can't really do door-to-door campaigning in the age of COVID, that it's not safe. I think that's a mistake because I think you could do door-to-door campaigning with a mask, standing back, and still make direct contact with voters. But they've made a decision. And Rachel Bitecofer, who you know is sort of the idiot savant of voter prediction for the last cycle or so, says that phone calls, phone banking, indirect contact does not produce the same effect as face-to-face voter contact. And so she's worried that the Democrats may have given up a very powerful weapon that's in their quiver. They've given up one of the big arrows, and that is by not doing face-to-face. Of course, the Republicans, they don't care whether you get
Yeah,
sick.
I mean, I have to say, Democrats unilaterally disarming would sure be unusual, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be par for the course. But that's exactly that's what she's somewhat worried about. Now, she's not worried about that. She hasn't been worried about that in every state because the margins are big enough that she's okay. But for example, in Texas, Trump is up in the Real Clear Politics average by about 4 points, 4.4%. If you remember back in 2016, Hillary Clinton and her campaign were so confident that they had the blue wall covered, they started going after Arizona and they started going after other states. And you and I kept screaming, wait a minute, make sure you got your base covered first before you start trying to expand, right? Because if you win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and you hold the states that Hillary won, you win the election. It's not a landslide, but you win the election.
She didn't need Arizona.
She didn't need Arizona.
But didn't
Biden doesn't need Texas. If he gets it, if he gets Florida and North Carolina and Arizona and Texas, it will be a landslide.
But apparently they got
buried.
So much money. I mean, they really have been kicking Trump's ass in terms of the fundraising. And for example, right after Kamala's debate, they beat their own record for single day donations coming in. That they are spending money in Texas, which astounds me. It
does. Well, here's the thing. I don't care if they spend money in Texas, as long as they are making sure to cover the base, make sure they stay 6, 7 points ahead in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Then if you want to go after Florida, because you remember Tim Russert of
Florida. Yeah.
Florida. That was his mantra.
Well, I think in all these electoral calculations, Trump can't win without Florida, isn't that?
I think that's true. And I know he can't win without Ohio, our home state. No Republican president has ever won the presidency without winning Ohio. And Ohio's on the bubble.
Hey, explain something, though, that I'm unclear about the relationship between national polls and state polls.
Okay.
Is there a point at which someone gets a lead in the national polls that is large enough, and I presume it would be north of 5 points, that it kind of doesn't matter what's in the state polls? In other words, if I'm leading nationally by 20 points, I'm going to win. It doesn't matter how I'm doing in Ohio.
At some point, that's probably true, but it depends on how good the pollster is and how well they weight for individual states. California and New York are so big that unless you wait properly for the distribution of all the vote, you could wind up with. Remember, Hillary beat Trump by what, 2.5 million votes in California? It was the bulk of her win in terms of the popular vote over Trump. So if you had polling that didn't weight properly, you could wind up with winning, and it's happened now, obviously, where people, in terms of raw votes, have won the national vote, but lose in the Electoral College. The same thing can happen in polling. The same thing. Now, there, like you say, there's probably some point, and I don't know that anybody's quantified it, that's maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 points. I don't know what the number is.
Where you can't have
that far ahead nationally.
You can't have an inverse.
You can't really lose it in all the states. But you know, the advantage of the big money that Biden's got is, as long as he continues to pound away in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, if he can win Florida, or if he could flip Ohio, it would be an enormous, enormous landslide. Then we'd have to be, then the thing you and I would be concerned about is this: will Dianne Feinstein vote to get rid of the filibuster? Because if the Democrats take the Senate,
right,
that's going to be the next big battle. And you and I, the one thing we're going to be concerned about is whether Dianne Feinstein will get rid of the filibuster.
All right, I want to talk about the Senate and the court in a minute, but I got one more question on polling.
Okay.
What about this alleged shy Trump voter effect?
Yeah, it's been pretty much disproved.
Not true.
It pretty much has been disproved. I think it was people looking for some explanation for why Trump won, and people who were just sort of shell-shocked, and as you say, were suffering from PTSD, trying to figure out, how did he pull this off? Well, he pulled it off if you do an autopsy, an electoral autopsy, by winning by the barest of margin in three states.
And the models, as I understand it, what was common across the mistakes was that they underweighted for non-college degree white men, correct?
That's exactly right. That is, and so, like I say, the New York Times, CBS, ABC, all the pollsters, except for sort of the crappy ones like Rasmussen and Survey USA, all the legitimate pollsters have now begun looking at education as a fundamental demographic in how they define who their likely voter is.
Which is why we've been subjected to 4 years of thoughtful profiles in interviewing white guys in diners in rural Wisconsin.
Exactly. Now, here's the possibility. The possibility is there was something else that they didn't get in 2016. There was some other mistake. And this is what has people freaked out. This is why everybody who was hoping for a rational outcome in 2016 is going, oh my God.
All right, so bottom line.
Maybe there's something else.
So 538, the Nate Silver, the great Nate Silver's website, runs any number of simulations. And as of this morning, said Trump has a 15% chance of winning, which I read somewhere else is like the same chance as if you have 3 children, they would all be boys, which in my case, okay.
You got 3 girls,
Yeah, my daughter has 3 boys. So it's not that unlikely, but
right.
if I'm a card-carrying member of the Biden bedwetter brigade, how secure can I feel?
I'd keep your rubber sheets on. I would keep your rubber, I would not get rid of the rubber sheets yet because I think here's the deal. Jerry, Florida counts early. And so the Florida results on election night should be known. Florida counts those mail-in ballots and has them all queued up and ready to go. When the polls close, they can release that vote. California stupidly doesn't even start counting them until after the elections close, till the polls close, rather. And so, but Florida, we should know in the Eastern time zone on election night. And if we see a big Biden victory, then you can take your rubber sheets off and go to sleep.
All right.
If it's close, if it's not known, I think you should keep them on.
Phil Brownstein on enuresis. Okay.
You're the one who brought up. You put yourself in the
David Plouffe, the campaign manager for Obama's first win, famously decried Democratic bedwetters who always have to have something to worry about. But you know, having gone to sleep on in 2016, I think it's okay. So let's talk about the Supreme Court for a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Senate Judiciary Committee is having a very bizarre hearing on Justice Amy
Coney Barrett.
Yeah, Trump's nominee, and it's like the ultimate in kabuki theater, which Lindsey Graham, the chairman from South Carolina, admitted in his opening. He said all the Republicans are going to vote for her and all the Democrats are going to be against her. And, so this is, I don't know why we're even doing this, basically.
Right.
But there haven't been a lot of fireworks so far. Who do you think is more motivated by what, sort of the whole thing that's going on, trying to ram through the nomination, the allegations that people are biased against her religion? Who's motivated more, Biden voters or Trump voters?
I don't think voters are paying them. I think Biden voters are more motivated on the issue of the Supreme Court right now. But I think that the truth is that Trump, not so much his voters as there's a portion of Trump voters and most of Trump's entourage in Washington has dedicated themselves to one thing, and it's getting a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court.
Court packing.
In favor court packing. That they really are doing the court packing, and that's just the Supreme Court. He's put through what, several hundred.
200.
How many is it?
200 district and court of appeals.
District and court of appeals, conservative, some of whom haven't even ever been in a courtroom, but they're ideologically right. So the court packing that's been done is, I really think that Mitch McConnell would be willing to give up his seat in Kentucky, and Lindsey Graham would give up his seat in South Carolina in order to get a lifelong change in the Supreme Court.
Well, that's, really, when you look at it, everybody, how can the Republicans go along with this? That's been the deal with the devil all along. They'll put up with anything from Trump as long as he appoints these conservative judges that the Federalist Society gives him the list of, and he's never thought about
that's their holy grail. That's their cup. And it makes perfect sense from their standpoint. Presidents come and go, but the Supreme Court sticks around. Now, there is a way out of that for Democrats if they win the Senate and the presidency. And we could talk about this another time if you want.
No, I want to let me ask you the question, because the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and some of the not so progressives are saying, look, if they're going to play dirty and they consider this to be improper, Merrick Garland and everything else,
right,
ram this through, then the only thing we can do is to enlarge the size of the court. And
right.
They call it court packing. And again, the Democrats have been beat to in framing the issue.
Right.
So Biden has been pressed about this. Kamala was asked about it in the debate. She very awkwardly refused to answer.
Right.
Joe said yesterday, I'm not a fan of court packing. I'm not sure what that means, whether he would or he wouldn't. So they would have to do two things, right? A, get rid of the filibuster, and B,
Right.
vote to change
Expand
the
the
size
Supreme
of the court, which is not enshrined on Moses tablets or anything. It's been in for 150 years. It's been 9 members, but I don't believe it's in the Constitution.
No, it's not in the Constitution. It's gone up and down according to the whims of the United States Senate at various different times. And look, would it be a power play by the Democrats? Absolutely, it would be. If, for example, you got rid of the filibuster, which brings Dianne Feinstein's vote into play. If you got rid of the filibuster, and with 51 votes, that's all it would take, say you add 4 seats to the United States Supreme Court. If it's 6-3 now, and Biden had 4 appointments, it would make it 7-6 in favor of moderate to liberal appointees to the court. I mean, Merrick Garland, for example, type figure, is not a purist liberal, but he's sort of slightly left of center, which is kind of where the country is. So if you did that, it's a power play by the Democrats, who have never been really good at power plays. But if they were willing to do that, you could rebalance the United States Supreme Court in one fell swoop.
See, and here's the thing is, again, the Republicans have beat Democrats. They've stolen a march in defining the issue. So now the issue is defined as court packing. What did you say? Court balancing or something. I mean, there's another way to put it. But the fact of the matter is, if they win the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they can do it. And if they do it, I guarantee you they will get wiped out in the midterm that comes 2 years later, because the Republicans already have effectively, as a messaging matter, as a communications matter, made this a mortal sin. Oh, court packing! How could you even think of doing such a thing when they've just packed the courts? And Joe Biden saying, "Well, I'm not a fan." They really, if they're going to do it, they really need to get ahead of this messaging on it. And I'm thinking one way, that the Democrats in the hearing have made it all about the Affordable Care Act, all about Obamacare, because if Amy gets on the court, the first thing she's going to hear is a case where the Trump administration is challenging the Affordable Care Act.
6 days later, yeah.
Yeah, and she's written and spoken against it. So if they did do that, and there were consequences, which I guess there would be in terms of people with pre-existing conditions, then I think that could create a political landscape where it would be more tenable for the Democrats to do it. But I think, right now it just looks like sort of a partisan struggle over power. If there was an actual substantive matter that hit people where they live, then I think it would make it possible for them to do it.
Well, it just seems to me that this is a communications problem more than it is a structural problem. The Democrats, last time we talked was before the vice president's debate, and I said I thought Kamala should bring up the court packing issue before Pence ever got to it.
That's right. That's right.
Even in her opening remark, I said I thought she should raise the issue that the Trump administration and Vice President Pence have been packing the courts, and if the Democrats have a chance, they should rebalance the court in favor of American democracy and justice. And it seems to me that it's all a communications issue, because the American people, I don't think, give a rat's behind about how many members there are of the United States Supreme Court. It's not something that affects anybody who's at a little league game or watching their daughter in soccer. Nobody cares.
Except, it goes back to this sort of meta issue of having information silos that, people who get their news from Fox News and Rush and Tucker and all these people are never going to hear
No.
the rational explanation, because they're very good Republicans, and their echo chamber, if you will, are very good at reducing issues to little sound bites that have emotional appeal. They're packing the courts. And meanwhile, the Democrats are over here, with Rachel on MSNBC and Jake on CNN going, well, in 1856, they're explaining it all. It's sort of a rational argument. And they need to find a way to cut through all of that.
We're preserving, the only way we can preserve your 24-year-old's ability to be on your health care program, to be on your health plan, is by making this move. The only way we can preserve your right to choose whether or not you want to have a baby is by making this move. The Democrats need to bring it down to very simple things that affect people's lives. And the advantage that they have, Jerry, is they are telling the truth.
Right. And I thought Kamala was actually pretty effective in the part of the debate where they were talking about
they're coming for you. Yeah.
They're coming for your health care. They're coming for your,
right.
That was very good. When it got to the point about when Pence went on the offense against her about quote unquote court packing, she was awful. She was just,
that's why I totally agree with you. I think that and I said it a week ago, that they should have, they bring it up before the other guy does.
No, that was a good point. That was a good point.
You take command of that issue, and then they look like they're going neener. But now they're behind on the issue. It's not in anybody's consciousness much yet. They could still get ahead, but
no, the Republicans have done they're genius at this stuff, because even if they get wiped out, and as you say, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, if they lose their seats, they'll sleep okay. Even if they get wiped out, they've already defined the debate for 2 years hence, or
unless the Democrats suck it up, have some cojones, and do what needs to be done. Look, Lincoln was willing to take the country to war to preserve a principle and to preserve the Union. The Democrats and Franklin Roosevelt was willing to take the country to war to defeat fascism, but the Democrats of our era have not been willing to do anything of the sort because they're too damn nice.
Well, of course, Franklin Roosevelt famously screwed up his attempt to pack the court too, which is the only, sort of modern
but he did it
reference.
too late in his term. He did it late in his term when he was trying to preserve advances of the New Deal, which the Supreme Court was unraveling. Well, I would do it if I were Biden and Harris. I would do it in the very first year. They're going to have to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, Jerry, and there's going to be some people in the Senate who don't want to get rid of the filibuster.
Poor old Diane, man. You and I have written about, well, we've been writing about for a long time about her age, that she's older than the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
But there have been a series of very tough pieces about her, questions among Democrats about her ability to, be the ranking member in judiciary, and is she up for the fight? Which frankly, I find very sexist, because
very sexist.
Yeah. You don't see this about Charles Grassley, you didn't see it about what's his name, that guy from Mississippi, until he was on his deathbed, and it's like, oh, maybe he won't be here for the vote because he's dead,
Well, yeah, Strom Thurmond could have been embalmed, and maybe Fox would have questioned whether or not he had the ability.
But, given that, it is true that Diane is a total institutionalist. You know, she's of a different era when the Senate was a very different body. You know, her whole career, her whole brand is about, you know, courtesy and civility and all of these other things. And there's just a lot of Democrats who don't have the
Well,
patience.
I think Calbuzz is going to have to make the argument, Jerry, and I think we could be well ahead of the curve on this. I think we probably need to make the argument that decency demands an end to the filibuster, that civility demands an end to the filibuster. If we could convince Diane that in the name of decency and civility, this is what must be done, then you'd give her a rationale to be for it. Because
We'll get on that. We gotta wrap it up. So
Okay.
you heard it from Phil Johnstein, you know, get your cojones, suck it up, and don't throw away the rubber sheets. All right, we're all over that. We're all right. Thanks, partner. 3 weeks to go.
All right.
White knuckle time. So
Exactly.
all right, we'll
All
talk
right,
to you
buddy.
next week. Thanks.